Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi, good morning. Welcome to today's masterclass, Arcserve Cloud Hybrid, Backup as a Service, and DRaaS as a Service. I'm Kane, Principal Consultant for Arcserve. Before we talk about the cloud hybrid itself, just have a briefly discussion on the standard 3-2-1 rule of data protection. This is a best practice to combat ransomware and also best practice in terms of providing the DRaaS solution for decades, actually more than 2 decades. We are looking at 3-2-1 rule of data protection. What I'm saying here is that as for all our important data, we should have 3 copies of the data, and 2 of the 3 copies, which means that one of the first copy of the data is your production data, then you have your backup data, and you should have a 3rd copy of the data as well. Okay, or that the 2 copies of the data are on a different media. Okay, and then at least 1 copy of the data should be at a second site itself or in the cloud. So traditionally, the 3-2-1 rule itself is started from sending it to the tip itself, and then the tip is going offsite. So that's how you meet your 3-2-1 rule of data protection. Then we basically enhance it, and then user actually have the data replicating to their offsite. It could be to their DRaaS site itself, or that we're replicating it to the cloud. Okay, so the cloud itself is actually become our offsite copy of the data. It's very much who provide you the cloud services. Then today, due to the increasing of the ransomware threat itself, we are also looking at how can we actually able to improvise the entire solution to actually provide a much faster recovery, because we know that things that we're trying to pull in from cloud orders, depending on what the cloud provider provide you, that is a concern in terms of how fast can we do the restoration for the on-site. So that's where we have our 3-2-1 rule of protection coming in, where we are looking at immutable storage at the on-site. Okay, so we'll also be able to keep a copy of the backup data in the immutable itself, such that in case the entire environment itself is being attacked by ransomware, we will still have the ability to recover it from the backup data from our immutable storage. Arcserve, we are able to provide the end-to-end solution, whether we are talking about our first solution where we are moving it to the cloud, which is what I'm going to talk about it today, or that we are having a copy to the immutable storage, which is our OneSafe immutable storage solution. All right, that is covered under a separate masterclass session. All right, so without further ado, we are going to just move into and look at what is Arcserve Cloud Hybrid. Arcserve Cloud Hybrid, very simple topology. Okay, we are looking at, for our customer, the data center itself does implement Arcserve UDP, which is our award-winning data protection solution that provide you with infinite incremental backup that can really shorten your backup windows itself to finish the backup, because there's no longer required a full backup. So that's how we meet all the challenges in terms of the backup windows. All the backup itself, we are able to send it to an RPS server, which that it also provide a built-in deduplication and compression. You do not require to adopt a high-end storage that provide a deduplication technology because it came inbuilt with Arcserve UDP. So customer with the on-site that's already running Arcserve UDP software, or they're having our Arcserve appliance, the all-in-one stock that provide you both the hardware and the software, then their data can get replicated to Arcserve Cloud. Okay, so in Arcserve Cloud itself, our user can replicate their backup only, or that they can actually have the backup replicate to the Arcserve Cloud, and at the same time have the ability to power up this backup itself in Arcserve Cloud in the event where their production site goes down. Okay, so that is really a touch-wood situation where you really need to swing over and do a failover in the Arcserve Cloud. So that is the whole topology of the Arcserve Cloud Hybrid. We'll go into more details in the following couple of slides. Okay, so Arcserve Cloud, Arcserve have couple of different data center. Okay, and the data center that I'm listing here is only very pertaining to data center that run Arcserve Cloud Hybrid. Okay, we do have data center in Australia also, but that run our Arcserve Storage Cloud solution. Okay, so that is a separate data center. But this the 4 data center, okay, in UK and the 2 in US and 1 in Japan, all is having a tier 4 equivalent. Is a tier 4 equivalent data center. I'm not going to go into detail of what the data center provided, okay, but just it is a tier 4 that in order to get a tier 4 equivalent, you need to meet certain kind of criteria, or is set up in our data center data sheet itself. But one of the things that I like to emphasize here is that our nearest data center is Japan. However, if we choose the data center to go to Japan, at the moment, our Japan data center is not able to take in more user, more subscriber for DR as a service. But if you're just looking at backup as a service, replicating your backup data from the on-prem and keep the copy in our Arcserve Cloud itself, you can still choose Japan. Okay, but if you're looking at the ability to extend to DR as a service, then you have the data center that allow us and still have the resources to actually pick up the new subscriber will be the one in US and UK. All right, so backup as a service. So backup as a service itself is not talking about sending your backing up directly to Arcserve Cloud. Okay, that will be a different solution if you are looking at that. Okay, we do have the solution on that. Contact us separately on that. But for Cloud Hybrid, backup as a service is talking about our recurrent point server itself, replication of the backup data to the Arcserve Cloud. Okay, and then basically you have the ability to manage, okay, the recurrent point retention itself. Okay, such that on the local, I may be keeping only 7 daily and then 1 weekly, 1 monthly. However, in the cloud itself, the Arcserve Cloud itself, I'm still keeping my 7 daily, but I'm keeping my 12 all my monthly itself for 12 monthly. So my long-term retention, everything is in the cloud. Okay, so that is what the backup as a service provider. All the data are encrypted. Okay, so you will be able to achieve secure transfer over the SSL, and the encryption for data is at rest in the cloud storage as well. Okay, so it's encrypted at rest as well as encrypted in transit. So with the global site duplication, okay, which is the feature that built in with Arcserve UDP technology itself, it ensures that minimum bandwidth is being used to do the optimized transfer of the data, okay, to the cloud itself. So, and with the infinite incremental backup itself, you do not require to actually transfer the full backup every week during your every weekly backup or every monthly backup to the cloud. Only the changes itself, the incremental changes itself, is being transferred to the cloud. And one of the things which that later on when I do a demo, I'm going to focus and show you how the recovery works, because sending the data is so transparent. And most of the cloud solution will just give you, like say, I will go to the portal itself, I do a download of my recovery point back locally, or I do a restore back locally. But in Arcserve Cloud Hybrid itself, we do one more step. We actually provide user a SFTP access for larger content restore. Okay, so we know that we are always able to actually make use of those SFTP client itself that is able to do auto connect. So when if I try to download 1 TB backup back on my premise itself, unless I'll allow the system to keep retrying itself if there is a drop in terms of the connectivity. Okay, so sooner or later I'm able to complete my my download of my backup recovery point. So the other service that provide in the Arcserve Cloud Hybrid itself basically is the DRaaS as a service. Like what its name say, is provide you the ability to actually power up your machine itself in Arcserve Cloud. Okay, if your production on-premise server touch wood for whatever reason cannot serve your customer anymore, so you have to DRaaS up a server in our cloud. So with the DRaaS as a service, our user will have a dedicated and always on nested hypervisor in the cloud. They can access this hypervisor actually, okay, and then based on the memory, based on the compute that user purchase subscribe, you will have the memory and CPU allocated, okay, for the hypervisor that's assigned to the subscriber. Okay, so we'll be able to configure our server itself to become a standby server VM in the Hyper-V itself. So in case anything or when we need it, we are always able to boot it up. Okay, and we don't have basically you can actually boot it up anytime you need it to check whether everything is running fine, or that you'll be but in the if that is a failover, then you are allowed to boot up your machine for continuously run alive for a month. Okay, so that is the so-called the contract, how the DRaaS as a service work, how long you are allowed to run the machine. So in terms of connectivity, okay, so user, because for there's not much point that you have the server running in the cloud where your user can't access it. So for the cloud DRaaS as a service itself, you are getting both the point to site and site to site VPN to the DRaaS system. Okay, so obviously for the site to site VPN itself, you need to work with the cloud support team to configure and test your DRaaS environment. That will involve getting your open up your firewall, or doing having your NAT on a network on premise routing, do the correct routing, etc. So all this is part of the implementation, and somebody will actually work with you during the onboarding time. Okay, then we talk about, if I'm having something that running in the cloud, do I have the ability to fail back? Okay, or that I must do a download, back it up and download it back and restore or back to my productions, to my on-premise server. That again will involve quite a fair bit of so-called downtime. Okay, for Arcserve Cloud Hybrid, okay, the topology itself is using our Arcserve UDP technology, and that allows us to perform a reverse replication of what we the server that is running in our Arcserve Cloud. And with that technology itself, you'll be able to make our on-premise itself to become the so-called the outside instead. So we'll be with that, we are able to do a failback, which is quite unique in terms of having really cut down the so-called the downtime that will incur when you talk about trying to fail back from a cloud. Okay, and usual case, each of the DRaaS services itself come with a public IP address, but for whatever reason, that you probably have multiple sites itself that need to have this VPN connection, then you may need to have, if you need to have additional public IP address, we do the subscription itself does include ability to add on additional public IP address. All right, so this is the highlight in terms of backup as a service and DRaaS as a service. So let's just go. Let's go to the actual onboarding start. Okay, because this is the masterclass. All right. So what happened during the onboarding? Let's say that you decide to subscribe to Arcserve Cloud. Okay. First of all, the on-premise itself, you need to be running Arcserve UDP software, or you're having appliance, Arcserve appliance. Okay, so it means that you are using Arcserve UDP for your on-prem backup. Okay, so with our subscriber itself will receive an email from our Arcserve support that containing access to the cloud hybrid itself. You get a URL to the Arcserve UDP console. You cannot actually log into the OS, okay, of that UDP console, but you are just getting the URL, okay, and you get the host name itself, the node name, the username, and the password for the cloud hybrid, okay. And during the onboarding, you will also be working with the engineer that assigned to assist you onboarding for any special request. For example, you need to whitelist the URL. Okay, we do have customers that just say, even though it's at the cloud, it was saying that they don't allow the URL to be able to access from public. The URL itself can only be accessed from their office. All right, so we'll have to do some firewall whitelisting for that URL for that. Okay, and during onboarding, that's also where you that's where you modify your password, default password for the cloud hybrid, as well as any other special thing that you probably want to bring up pertaining to the environment. Okay, so in the cloud hybrid, if you have the compute subscribe, okay, you will also get the password for the root account for a Linux backup server in the point to site VPN access. Okay, you know that you need the we need a so-called Linux proxy server if we want to power up a Linux machine, okay, in the Hyper-V itself. So that that server itself, okay, the VM itself is pre-configured. So you actually get the password for the root account for the backup server itself, and also that you will get a configuration file for the point to site, okay, VPN. We'll have that more details later on. We'll talk about our DRaaS as a service. Okay, all right. So so this is just a summary up. Okay. The username account itself is actually cloud user. That's a standard. All right. Okay. So backup as a service. So to run backup as a service, for this session itself, basically it is not a session to actually show how we do the backup using Arcserve UDP. So I won't be running too much on the Arcserve UDP itself, okay, but very much that I'm just going to show in terms of what we typically do when we want, what are the tasks that we actually do when we subscribe to our Cloud Hybrid. Okay, so at Cloud Hybrid itself, we create a protection plan. Okay, we create a policy, and that policy itself will basically define in terms of what are the, okay, where are we going to replicate the data, and how many retention that we're going to keep. Okay, and we'll share this policy to the with a cloud user account for the on-premise UDP replication task. Okay, so we'll add this, we use this plan, okay, when we configure a replication task to say where it replicates to. We will see a demo on that. All right, so by default, when we subscribe to the Cloud Hybrid, there are 3 protection plans that's already created. Okay, so the 3 of it is basically based on 7 daily, 5 weekly, 12 monthly, and 31 ad hoc backup. Another one is 5 daily, 1 weekly, 1 monthly, and 1 ad hoc backup. The last one is 31 daily, 1 weekly, 1 monthly, and 1 ad hoc backup. So if you require more, okay, or something different, I want a 14 daily instead, you can create the plan yourself. All right. Okay, so just going to show just going to show some very quick demo. All right, so basically I have my demo environment here. Give me a minute. Okay, I just showed my demo environment. Okay, so this is assuming this is my server environment where I have my domain controller, I have my EX VMware EX6, I have some physical server, SQL server, I have my Hyper-V server. All right, so I also have the environment already implemented with Arcserve UDP. Okay, so I do have my Arcserve UDP running in here. Okay, so I already have it running in this environment. So this is my local Arcserve UDP console. Okay, and obviously this is a lab environment, so I have a lot of rubbish in there. Okay, different test server in there, and some of it is not even valid anymore. All right, but just that I just power out this environment this morning, so some of the backup haven't been kicked off yet. All right, so this is my your on-premise Arcserve UDP. Once we subscribe to the cloud itself, okay, then we'll have, okay, where is my jetpack? Okay, then we are giving a URL itself, in which that, okay, let me say I need to run it with, rather than Chrome, I need to run it with Edge. Okay, I'm being in a bit of problem with Chrome. Okay, so you'll be giving the you'll see that it's actually the same look and feel, but you will not be able to access this particular server itself, because this is the cloud hybrid console. All right, but due to the look and feel is the same, there is no learning curve on how to actually handle it once the our user already a Arcserve UDP user. So I have cloud user, okay, and I have my favorite password, UDP. Okay. So now that I log it in, and this is where you will see your cloud hybrid console. So it looks exactly the same, okay, and you will also see whatever nodes that we actually replicate from the on-prem itself, the data will get replicated to the cloud, and the nodes will show up in the old nodes here. Okay, and in terms of the plan, okay, we can create our those protection plan for this cloud hybrid. So by default, as mentioned, you already have a 7-day, the 5-day, and then the 30 daily. Okay, so all this is a default plan itself. Okay, so if I do not want to use the default plan, I can always create my own new plan. Okay, so I can always say that this is a remote manage. Okay, and then I can say what is the this is basically go to which data store, because the data store is already provided for you, and then you just define basically how many monthly copy that I want to keep it there. I don't want my ad hoc, but I want the 30 daily, etc. So that's all you need to do in terms of say creating this particular plan. Okay, then after that you just can save it. Okay, okay, so yeah, I haven't solved my browser problem yet. Okay, so basically once you save it itself, then basically what you can do, I'm not going to save it. Okay, so once I have the plan ready, then next what we normally do is we will share the plan with this user account. Okay, so if you have multiple sites, then we can actually have different account itself, and then we will say which plan itself that is tied to which account. Okay, because what we do here is we just do an edit, and then if we have any plan here, then we can just add or remove. Okay, so when I add or remove, then I won't be able to see this plan anymore. Okay, so that's how we actually create a plan, a policy that meets our needs. So once we have the policy ready, then we just look at our protection plan. Okay, for our new user here, where you are not that familiar with Arcserve UDP, Arcserve UDP protection plan offer a workflow. It always starts with a backup. Then you say, after the backup, what do you want to do next? All right. So it can be that, for example, this is my agent plan itself. After the backup itself, I want it to go to a tape. I want it to copy to a tape, and I want it to copy to a tape for which backup. Okay, whether I want the monthly to copy to the tape only, or the weekly to copy to a tape only. So this is a workflow. And so instead of copying to the tape, for example, okay, what I can do here, okay, is that I can just say I want to do a modify. Okay, let's say I don't want it to copy to the tape. I delete it off first. All right, I say I want to get it replicate to my cloud, to the Arcserve cloud. I subscribe to the Arcserve cloud. Then let's say I'm going to replicate to a remote managed RPS server, and where is the destination? Okay, so the destination itself, based on the a letter that you receive from Arcserve, it will actually tell you what is your remote console. Okay, so actually your remote console is pretty straightforward. The link that provided, okay, where is my, a minute, where is, oh, I close off the screen, is it? Okay, never mind. Okay. See the cloud hybrid link that which I was using. Okay, this will be the URL that's provided, and your host name is actually is inside the URL. All right, so that is where we actually get our host name. So we put in our host name, and the username will be cloud user. Okay, so basically this is cloud user and running at what port. By default, the port was never changed. It was based on 8015. Okay, but once you actually have that entered once, the system will remember your setting, your cloud account itself. Okay, so in our case here, I already have it configured once, so I have it stored inside the list, okay, inside the database. And you will do a connect. And then you just connect, and from here you will see all the policy that is already configured at the cloud. Okay, so whatever policy that's available, you just select the one that you're looking for, that you want it for this particular policy, and again you can schedule it. Okay, so you can do a replication job schedule to actually minimize the to say that when you can do the replication, but rather than creating a job schedule, most of our users creating a throttle schedule instead. Okay, so it allows the replication to continue replicating, but you will limit the how much bandwidth that it can use. Okay, in terms of the the day itself, and then the time. Okay, so you can actually create multiple throttle schedule, because some user probably say that I want to have one that is allowed only have minimum replication on the Monday morning itself, because there'll be very high traffic for internet usage, etc. But the rest of the day, this is what it allows, etc. So you can create multiple throttle schedule. You are not limited by one throttle schedule only. So once you have that created, then you just save it. So you will have the plan already saved, that now it shows that the workflow here for whatever server that joining this protection policy. The first task is actually do a backup. The second task itself, after the backup, I want it to replicate it to the Arcserve cloud. So I don't have to wait until the backup kickoff. I can always say that let's try to do a replicate now. Okay, because I want to make sure that it works. Okay, so I can say replicate now, and the system will submit a job, and it will start replicating the required point to the cloud. So that is how we actually do a very quick configuration in terms of creating the policy at the cloud itself, and then assign it to a local Arcserve UDP, okay, assign to the account, and then add it in as a task, protection task inside your existing protection plan, okay, for those that server that you want to do the replicate. Then finally, okay, once you get the server get replicate to the cloud itself, you will see the server itself appear in the all nodes, okay, in the list here. So you can see that this server itself, because I do a replicate now, it kick off immediately. Okay, so Arcserve replication, the Arcserve UDP replication has the ability to replicate from where it stopped. It can resume a replication. So if I replicate until I test it for 1-2 gigs, then after that I say, okay, I want to stop it. You can always cancel it. Then the next replication will start. You'll be able to resume whatever that's data that's already replicated. You will not transfer again. Okay, so it will resume from where it stopped. Okay, so that is the replication. All right. So now we already have the data replicated to the cloud. So the it's sitting nicely up to the cloud there. And obviously, if I still have my local copy for restoration, I will restore from my local copy. That will be a lot faster. But like what I say, okay, some user for the local copy itself, they keep minimum copy for operation, install, or restore only. They only keep, let's say, 7 daily and 1 weekly, 1 monthly. All right. But in the cloud itself, due to we offer unlimited storage for the subscription period. Okay, so if you do 1 year, you can keep your policy allows you to keep either, for example, 30 daily, 5 weekly, and 12 monthly. Okay, or that you get 52 weekly, etc. So basically, it's a month of the weekly data. It's a year of the weekly data. So that is what you can do. All right. So when you don't have the data on local site to do a recovery, then we can go to the cloud and do the recovery to restore it back. We'll be able to, for a granular restore, I'm able to download using the browser. Very similar to what you do when you do probably Dropbox. You download your file from Dropbox, for example. Okay, so quite similar concept. Alternatively, if I'm having the whole download that I want to download it back, is like, let's say 300 gig. That folder is about 300 gig, which that I need to restore back. Using a browser to download it back, what if I will download for 3 hours, then suddenly it drop off? Okay, my internet drop off, my browser drop off. So typically I won't be able to resume and I'll have to start all over again. That is not a very good idea. So that is where we are able to do a SFTP download, okay, for granular recovery. So recovery data from cloud for file restore, this is a 2 typical method, okay. Another one is basically the reverse replication. That is the worst case scenario. We'll talk about the worst case scenario later on. Okay, so let's look at the recovery file from the cloud first. Okay, the recovery file folder itself there's no different in terms of how we do the local recovery and how do we activate from the cloud hybrid recovery. The interface is the same. Okay, but just for the benefit of our new user here, all right, if I want to run the recovery, okay, and even though this machine is replicating, but because, okay, let me just call another machine. Let's check another machine. Okay, so I can just say that I want to do a restore. Okay, and you just call all the agent browser as per normal, and from here I'll just do my browse required point, and I can see again what are the required point that's available. Okay, this is a test machine, and the one I have, the last one was actually I have 13 and 15. Okay, so basically from here you can see the download icon here. So this is where you do the download recovery. You will not be able to say I restore to okay. So the most of the cases our user will use this. You will just click whatever files that you need, and then you will do a download, rather than you do a next, and then you will need to restore to a path. Okay, so if you want to do a restore to a path itself, what we need to make sure is that obviously you are probably in the you have the VPN out all this, and you actually allow the cloud itself to actually push the data directly back to the servers. Okay, which most of the time we don't enable that. All right, so that's why most of the cases for the restore itself, we use the download instead, the download button instead. Okay, so say I chose a wrong server. I shouldn't use this server because I don't have much data to actually do a download. So from here I can just say yes, I want to save it, and so that is where you have the data downloaded. All right, so this is pretty straightforward for normal granular restore. But the main thing here is we are talking about what if I have a lot of data that I need to restore. Okay, so my main point here for bulk data restore, you are also given the ability to do a SFTP restore, okay, to download the data back. So what we need to do is we mount the recovery point first for the server that we want to restore, okay, and then we use a SFTP client. By default, the user ID that we use to basically log into a cloud hybrid itself, that is the same user ID and password for your SFTP. Okay, and the port is actually 37037. Okay, so that is our SFTP port. So let's just do another very quick demo. Okay, I don't want to use this server. This is a bad server to use. All right, I have a huge folder in my domain controller. Okay, so I'm just going to use this server instead. So I just do a restore. Let's do a browse. Okay, so rather than browse the required point here, I just cancel it first. I have a mount recovery point. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'll just choose the dates that I want to do a restore. I choose the required point here. Okay, and then you come down here, you will see all your drive itself. I only have C drive, so I do a mount. You will mount it to Z drive because that is the drive that's automatically able to access via the SFTP. Okay, so you have to mount to a Z drive, and the backup encryption password itself here. Okay, you need to enter it in. Okay. Okay. So now we can see that the drive is mounted as Z drive. I can close this screen or you don't close this screen, up to you. Okay, but I just for the demo, I just close it. All right. So now on my PC, okay, I'm going to run my I have my Win SCP. Okay, not going to do an upgrade, so I just. So for the Win SCP itself, okay, then you will put in your protocol, your host name. I'm using 37037, your username, and your password. Then from there, I do a login. Okay, so I just continue. So you can see this is actually my backup. So from here, I can just choose, let's put a folder. Okay, let me, where am I? Okay, I create a new, this one is in DRaaS. Okay, sorry. Okay, I create a folder, new demo, and I can just say what are the files data that I want to SFTP over. So that is your standard SFTP, doing your SFTP download. So if for any reason that your download go halfway, I download 100 gig already, then it break. At least the SFTP client itself has the intelligence to actually auto connect it back. Okay, and then once all the so-called the download completed, then you can unmount the, you can just go back to the system here, and then if I can go back to a mount require point here and dismount the Z drive again. Okay, but now I shouldn't choose everything to restore back. Okay, same. Okay, I'm actually having it under the desktop, and so you can see that this is the folder that actually get restored back. Okay, so the data, so now it's all done. So you can see all the data is in here. Okay, so that's how we actually do bulk restore using Arcserve, from Arcserve Cloud Hybrid using the SFTP method. Okay, let me just dismount it. Okay, so when it's done, I just dismount the require point. That's all. All right. So that's for the SFTP downloading from the SFTP client. All right. So that's what I covered so far. Is very much on backup as a service. So having your data up, only replicating your data to the cloud itself. The next one we're going to cover is DR as a service. Okay, so DR as a service will involve a lot more things than just having your backup data sent to the cloud. I want to have the ability to have the machine able to run as a virtual standby in Arcserve Cloud, or I'm able to initiate an instant virtual machine. Instant virtual machine is available for both Windows and Linux. Okay, virtual standby is only applicable to Windows platform only. Okay, so for the as mentioned, for if you subscribe to DR as a service, you are having a you get access to a Hyper-V server. Okay, and to connect to this Hyper-V server itself, you will be providing with point-to-site VPN and a site-to-site VPN. By default, if I remember correctly, there's about only 5 point-to-site VPN connection allowed. Okay, so if you require more, you will need to discuss yourselves and then to add it into the contract itself. All right, so that is for the point-to-site VPN. So for point-to-site VPN, you'll be able to access your server or virtual machine anywhere. You don't have to be in the office. Okay. And to allow your point-to-site VPN, the point-to-site VPN itself, basically we support the one we provided as OpenVPN. So your client itself, your Windows 10 or whichever platform you are running, you should have an OpenVPN client installed. Okay, and we'll be providing you with the OpenVPN config file that you will put it in your local installation, and with that you will be able to connect to the Arcserve Cloud using the point-to-site. Okay, and to connect to a remote Hyper-V, which is not local in your own local area network, there are certain things from Windows itself that you need to enable. Okay, so the step-by-step in terms of how do you actually enable is actually provided in our onboarding guide as well. All right, you don't have to go and search in Microsoft to figure out how to do a remote management for Hyper-V, but this step will get step-by-step will provide to you. Okay, so once you have all the the OpenVPN installed, then you'll be able to do the login, and after that you'll be able to connect to the Hyper-V itself. Okay, so that is how what you will get for DRaaS as a service. Okay, so before we move on, I'll just do a very quick to show you. I already have my OpenVPN installed. Okay, I also have the files copied into my local Windows 10 already. So when I right click, one of it is my own office one. So I have the cloud user. I just do a connect. Because all this is a run once effort only. So once I have that, then I don't have to redo it again and again. And for the Hyper-V, okay, so my Hyper-V manager. So I go into my Hyper-V manager itself. I'll be able to say I connect. Okay, it was already saved. Okay, so because I already saved it here, so I am able to connect immediately. But say I haven't saved it, then when I say connect, I'll just connect to another machine. So I put in the machine name, the host name, which is part of your URL, and connect as a different user. And this user will be the cloud user that which I'm talking about. Okay, and all the while that we are using that, and then anyway, so it's a cloud user and then the password. So once you have that done, you click OK, and you'll be able to access the Hyper-V that you subscribe to. Okay, and the server that's basically created as already. I have this server virtual standby in case that it fails. Okay, so this server is already in here and is in a power off mode. So you can see that in the virtual standby itself, I also configure that I have the ability to revert back 5 backup. So in case that the latest backup actually have problem, that server actually have problem, I can quickly try to revert back to my previous the previous 2 or 3 backup itself. All right, so that is how you can actually configure for your virtual standby. All right, but again, all this will also translate into the amount of front-end TB data that you require to subscribe under the compute. Okay, so that is for the connectivity. All right. So once you have all this connected, oh, okay. Before I talk about the policy itself, for the site-to-site VPN, all right, for demo system, we won't be able, or even if you're doing a POC, you won't be able to show a site-to-site VPN because that involves a lot of configuration effort, and also that our user will require their own partner to go in for the expertise in terms of firewall configuration, etc., or MAD, etc. Okay, but when you are on onboarding, when the users have done the subscription, then you work with support for this site-to-site VPN configuration. All right, now we're going to talk about the software part. Okay, so for the software part itself, for DRaaS as a service, we use virtual standby for Windows Server. Okay, because for Windows, for Linux itself, we will be using instant virtual machine. Because for Linux instant virtual machine, it has the ability to transparently run a recovery behind the scene while the machine is running. Okay, so we'll be using the instant virtual machine. But for Windows instant virtual machine, it doesn't have the ability. That's why it will be created as a virtual standby when we set the when we set up this the policy itself. Okay. Another thing that okay, earlier on I mentioned that when we replicate your data to Arcserve Cloud, okay, the data itself is encrypted at rest. The data itself is encrypted in transit. So for virtual standby, the system will need to know what is the encrypted password in order to run conversion because it needs to read the data. Okay, so with that, what we normally would do is that from the cloud console itself, there is a feature called set backup password. Okay, you will put your encrypted backup password here, and with Arcserve, the protection policy itself will try to pick up the password from the password list that you set it, and to try every single one and see which is the one can be successfully used for the conversion. Okay, so if all the password, if you list up 8 passwords in here and all the 8 passwords fail, then your virtual standby will also fail because the system doesn't know what is the password, encrypted password. So as part of the process, we will set the backup password for virtual standby. Okay, and then in the policy itself, we will also add a virtual standby task for the Windows Note. Okay, so the we can, in general case, because for the virtual standby itself, the storage, the front end storage, the storage that required for the virtual standby is already subscribed and provisioned. All right. So most of the time, what we'll do is we already added, okay, this protection task itself into our protection plan. That whichever server that using this protection plan, the replication plan, will have a virtual standby created automatically. But in some scenario, user may actually ask, I subscribe 4 TB for my DRaaS as a service. On top of my compute, I have a 4 TB for front-end storage. However, I have 10 servers, but I only want to configure for 3 servers first. The other servers, I don't want to configure yet. Okay, so that 3 server itself will take up probably 3 point something TB. But whatever left over, okay, if I have a server when I need it, I'm able to actually able to configure it on the fly. Okay, and then having the system to only start do the conversion after I've done the configuration. But of course, if you're using this method, you will see that there will be some delay time, because the system have to, if that server itself is 500 gig, you have to wait for the system to convert and process that 500 gig and make it into a VM before it can actually power up. So there is some time delay in that. Okay, if you are not doing it as a permanent task as a virtual standby. Okay, so once the server is already converted from virtual standby itself, at any time if I want to bring up that server, I have the ability to either bring it up from my Hyper-V, or I actually bring it up from my UDP console here. So for a UDP console itself, if I have multiple virtual standby server and I need to have sequence the virtual standby server, say server 1 need to power up first, then I can power up server 2, then after that server 3. I can set a delay, I can set a sequence, which server need to be powered up first. Okay, and then how much time I delay in between of the boot. Okay, to allow the first server to finish power up before the second server get power up, etc. So this can be orchestrated using the concurrent virtual standby, the standby VM feature that's provided. All right, just a quick show. UDP master. Okay, so the virtual standby itself basically is in the Arcserve cloud. So the policy is tied to the cloud itself, is not the local policy. So if I look at my plan here, okay, so you can see that over here I have a plan, okay, in which that I have it replicate from remote managed RPS server, and it also has a second task that allow me to do a virtual standby. So if I go into more details, you can see that for the virtual standby here, okay, you validate the server, you say the source etc. from my replicate task, and the Hyper-V host name is already provided, and we'll be using our cloud user ID. Okay, so once you get it connected, you will just need to say how many required point snapshot that I want to assign from this particular server. But again, remember that I mentioned it does translate to how much front end and storage that I subscribe for the for the DR as a service. This is separated from my backup as a service. Okay, so for DR as a service, the disk itself is actually already specified for you, which is under a separate volume from the backup data store. Okay, so that it have different IOPS and it doesn't get impacted from the backup itself. Okay, and obviously you will have whether which cloud connector that is connected to all these things. Okay, but since my virtual standby I don't have a site-to-site VPN, it doesn't make much difference to me. But when you have the DR as a service and when you work with the engineer helping you on the onboarding, you once everything get configured, you advise you that which connector, which connection that you are supposed to connect to for your virtual standby. Okay, so that is for the virtual standby. So once I have the virtual standby created, okay, let's say that I started with backup as a service, then after that I add in the compute, okay, or that I actually subscribe all the same everything at the same time, but I don't want to look into my DRaaS as a service first. I only start it after that, okay, that I'm satisfied that my replication is already go up to the cloud successfully already. Now I add in the virtual standby. I don't have to wait until the scheduling time, etc., to see whether my virtual standby, my configuration, does it work or not. I can kick it on immediately. Okay, I don't have to wait for a schedule. Okay, I can just go to my server here and then say that for this server itself, I can just say virtual standby. I click resume. The system will immediately go and start converting the server itself. Okay, so that is where that's how we say that you are able to actually do a so-called on-the-demand virtual standby in that case. Okay, yeah. So I just say resume, then you just go and check whether there's any required point that has not been converted. All right. This server, I already, it's not run. There's no new backup coming in, so it shouldn't have any more required point. Okay. So anyway, that's how the virtual standby work. Okay. And okay, so to power it up, okay, I can just say standby VM, and from here I can tell the system what network setting that I want to use, etc. Since I only have one machine, I don't need to say delay trigger, etc. Okay, and okay, just say I want to power on the machine, and subsequently this server itself should be powered on. Okay, so wait for a while, it should be powered on. So you can now see that it's starting. The server now starting. So obviously, if you have a VPN connected, then your user will be able to access the server. So same thing, once I'm done with the server, if I just power it on for DL only, then subsequently what I want to do is I basically I can power it off. Okay, so say that this guy is already powered on. I'm not going to wait for it to finish power on. Then I can just still come back in here, standby, and then I just say shut down the VM. Okay, so if when we are only do a testing, I just want to make sure that it's converted nicely orders. I want to make sure that when I power on and power off, I want it to do it from Arcserve Cloud Console here. All right. Okay. So that is the DRaaS as a service. For Arcserve virtual machine itself for Linux. Okay. There is some process how to do it, but I don't have a Linux at the moment to actually show it. So I just leave it here, but we do support that we can deal the machine for Linux as well. Okay, one last thing before we talk about the what happened after you run the DL in our Arcserve cloud. Okay, Arcserve UDP have this feature called Assure Recovery. Okay, this is a test to make sure that my server that inside my DR platform itself is able to power it up. Okay, it doesn't panic or it doesn't go blue screen. So that is the Assured Recovery test. So with the cloud hybrid itself, user can also create a assured recovery test if you subscribe to DRaaS as a service. Okay, and you will be able to get the system to bring up the server itself to see whether it can be powered up. So if it can't power up, then at least we know that for some reason the recovery points start to fail already. The AR has failed. Okay, so you will not come into a situation that only when you require the DL service itself, then you found out that your so-called the virtual standby machine cannot power up properly. All right. So now say that my virtual standby machine already powered up in the Arcserve Cloud itself. What we can do is that because your latest data is sitting in Arcserve Cloud already, we allow during the times, okay, you create a host-based agentless backup during the DR. Okay, so you'll be still using back the same data store itself, but you back up this particular server that you run it as a virtual standby. Okay, there's no agent need to be installed. You just back it up via the entire VM, the host space itself, and if anything is so, once it's already have it back up, and when your on-premise resources, your servers is back and running, your environment itself is running, then you'll be able to run a reverse replication. Okay, so you can replicate the backup data back from your to your local site. Okay, and then use either the virtual standby at the local site, and if you happen to have physical server, you can still do a virtual standby to a local hypervisor, and after that do a BMR from the virtual standby itself locally. That will really cut short your so-called your time that required to bring back the physical server locally back from the cloud. All right. What if your server, everything is running fine? Okay. However, it could be that your Arcserve data store, your data itself locally, your backup data at the local site are corrupted. Okay. Or your RPS server are corrupted, or that you need to have a large copy of you want to have the entire server data back locally to do a restoration. You don't want to use a SFTP to get it back because the data is too big. Okay, you want to you're looking at, can I just download the unique data block on it? I want the download in the duplication format. So that's where we talk about the reverse replication. Okay, so the reverse replication itself allow us to say which data range, okay, or that I can select which recovery point to replicate back. I can select one recovery point to replicate back. Okay, so after I done the replicate back itself, then I'll be able to do a restoration locally, or I do a BMR locally. Okay, so the reverse replication itself will the recommendation, of course, we say you replicate to an empty data store, okay, a new data store itself, or that if you put it into a same data store anyway, you will give you your target node name itself will actually have a prefix in front. Okay. So that is for the reverse replication. So same thing here. Escape at my require point here, require point server here. Okay, I can say, sorry. Oh, this copy, it don't have it enabled. Okay, so I can't show you. Okay, I forgot to ask them to help me to upgrade this copy itself. But anyway, once it's upgraded, we'll be able to show the, then we'll do a right click. Oh, sorry, wrong click. But still, it's not upgraded yet because it's actually showing under the remote console itself. But anyway, because my version is still 7.0, 8.1, yes. Oh, they disable it. Okay. Reverse replication, we have to, okay. Okay, so you can see that when I go to my demo set, I went to a remote console itself. I click here, I didn't see anything under the remote console. Allow me to do a reverse replicate. That's because reverse replication itself, you need to log an issue with the support itself to enable, to actually activate and tell you, to allow you to do that reverse replication back. Okay, if you're depending on the that's where bring to our next topic in terms of subscription. Okay, the ingress itself, depending on whether we go, our data center is hosted in Arcserve data center, okay, or is hosted in AWS. Okay, so backup Arcserve, backup as a service itself, the Arcserve Cloud Hybrid backup as a service, the BaaS, is we are allowed to have it hosting in AWS. Okay, so if your region, if the country itself have the AWS in the region, then you can actually choose to have it hosted in the AWS rather than in Arcserve Cloud. Okay, that the AWS in fact was the favorite so-called data center selected for our Singapore customer due to that is a region, there's an AWS in Singapore. Okay, but when there is impact when I talk about the reverse replication here, I'll talk about it in the next couple of minutes. So first, we'll look at the cloud hybrid subscription. Okay, cloud hybrid subscription itself, backup as a service, is based on front-end terabyte. So you can subscribe based on your retention itself, whether 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. Okay, and there is the actual entitlement for ingress is actually based on the front-end terabyte subscribe. So if my front-end terabyte is 5 TB, it means that I have the rights, okay, free of charge for 5 TB data restore. Okay, so that is a worst scenario when I have able to do the entire 5 TB restore itself. Okay, but if you want to do a reverse replication, you keep doing it, then you actually consume from the ingress itself. That's why we also the feature itself is disabled by default, and when you really need it, then you open a ticket to let support knows that when you need it, then they'll open it up. Okay, and once it's done, you close it off again. So that is for the when you try to replicate out from the Arcserve Cloud or when you actually reside it in AWS. Because for AWS itself, there is an English charge beyond the subscribed front-end TV when hosting at AWS. Okay, so that is something that you need to be aware of when we have our cloud hybrid subscription hosting service inside AWS. So the front-end TV itself, the way we count the workload is the use data. Okay, so if the current source data itself, when you add up totally, is 5.12 TB, for example, always make sure that you add an additional growth of 10%, 15%, and to determine that that is what you require as front-end TB. Okay, because we charge by the front-end TB. Okay, you need to allow it for some up and down in terms of the total data that the total front-end and data that you have. Okay. So for our existing Arcserve UDP customer, to really check how much front-end data that they have, it's pretty straightforward. Rather than go into every server to find out how much data that you have, there is a managed capacity report. The managed capacity report itself, you zoom in, you have the latest, the last full backup size and the report itself. Okay, so it show you in terms of what is your usage of the storage itself. Okay, so this is your front end data. So we can just use this front end data and add on top of it 10%, 15% as an estimation in terms of what will be your actual front end data itself at the end of the year, at the end towards your subscription period. So for DR as a service, okay. So first of all, before you want to do DR as a service, you must have a backup as a service first. Your data must be replicating to the Arcserve cloud first before you can enable the DR as a service. Okay. So on top of the what you subscribe for the backup as a service, you need to subscribe a front-end TB of virtual machine required for DR as a service. Okay, so as I mentioned, this also translates that your ability to specify how many snapshots that you want to put it in for your VM. Okay, if you always say only keep the latest snapshot, then obviously your front-end TB terabyte that you put it in is the one that's closest to what you subscribe for. However, if you're looking at the ability to say, I want to have ability to actually roll back a file backup automatically without any downtime, etc., then you need to put in the consideration of the additional 4 snapshot that you need to put it inside the virtualization. Okay. And you will need to say how much compute that you require. Okay, so the compute itself is very much in terms of how much RAM, okay, to allow for all your machine to power up all together. Okay, so even though hypervisor allows you to share the RAM, etc., but once you share the resources, your performance of the server will go down. So if you are looking at sharing the RAM itself, then that is something that you need to be aware of. If I have 5 machines, when one machine only fails, then I have all the full capacity, the resources. However, if I power up all the 5 machines, and by right I should have 64 gig RAM, but in total, but I only subscribe for 32 gig RAM, then you will know that all the performance of the machine may be degraded badly. All right. And again, the last one, do we need add-on IP address? Because add-on public IP address, because we only provide one public IP address per DR as a service. Okay, that's all I have for today. Okay, in terms of the Arcserve Cloud Hybrid. So if you are an existing Arcserve UDP user, or that you would like to have a trial POC in Arcserve UDP together with our Arcserve Cloud Hybrid, you can always reach out to us at presalesapp@arcserve.com. Okay, one of our pre-sales will reach out to you and work with you on how we do our POC or for any other additional question that you would like to bring it up, how our solution works. Okay. All right. I don't have any question on here. If that's the case, I'll close my session now, and I thank you for your time.